Hi all, this is Skate, and let me start this video by saying, what a buff. This tank has received one mighty buff, which I would say has brought it from 0 to hero. But I actually don't think this tank was that bad before, it was just ridiculously slow. Now, however, you could argue it's a little bit overcooked. But, all that being said, I am loving driving this E3. It is an absolute monster frontally. Does anyone remember I put up a video just before the buff? Look at the mobility on it. It's silly. Right, I put up a video just before this tank did get a buff, did 6.8k damage, and lost. And I was in this exact position. I'm at the start of a game, nobody on the red team has been spotted, and I'm flanking in an E3 and lighting everybody up. And the reason I chose this position is because it is godlike for this tank. But an E3 spotting an entire red team, it's a little bit unheard of. And strange. But in the position I'm in, I am very, very strong. Even when things are rushing me like this, because I have walls around me, which makes me very, very difficult to flank. And you'll notice I'm completely ignoring the tortoise, and I'm working down the Death Stars first. But one thing I do want to point out, when the tortoise comes up over the ridge, every single time I've gone in close to him. And the reason I've gone in close is because he has fantastic gun depression, and by coming in close, he can't exactly shoot at the lower plate, which is the big old weak spot on the front of this tank. So in the position I'm in here, well, I'm a little bit overexposed. However, it's still a very, very strong position. If you use it correctly. I was overextending myself there. But nonetheless, you can see this E100. He is struggling to find a position to penetrate this tank. With that lower plate hidden in this sort of angle, and the upper, well, machine gun port on top, not exactly being a huge weakness at this angle, and not exactly being a huge weakness anyway, has completely changed the course of this game, stupidly early on. Because there's an E3 on your flank in the first minute of the game. In what world does that happen? Yeah, so that really, I think, made a difference in that battle. And in my opinion, putting a tank like that in that position where it's ridiculously strong that early on not only gets you a scout badge in an E3, but 4,826 damage. And it makes you one hell of a distraction. It makes everybody look at your tank, and it makes them turn their guns. It gives your team one hell of an advantage. Because that is the thing with this tank. It's frontally an absolute behemoth. The weak spots, though. Lower plate. Lower plate is... it's actually quite strong in the middle, but next to the track wheels on the inner lower plates is very, very weak. And the next weakness to that is on top of the tank, but you're going to need premium ammunition to go through the bit on top. So when you're driving this thing, what you really, really want to be doing is hiding the lower plate at all costs, and wiggling to try and avoid direct shots into the MG port on top. The other thing which I think is very, very important is, well, actually there's two things I need to point out here. I'm trying to get myself into this position here, because my lower plate is now hidden by that big pile in front of me. Even though I'm not directly close to it, my lower plate is hidden by it, which makes me an ever so hard target to penetrate. And I do mean ridiculously hard. If I tried to get really close to it, those two E100s would have side shots on me, which is why I'm using it at range to hide the lower plate. The other thing, the track wheels and the armor behind the track wheels is pathetically weak. To the point where if you try to wiggle left and right and you overextend it, you're going to get penetrated and tracked all day long through those track wheels. In my opinion, and some people may disagree, but I don't angle this tank. Just keep the front directly towards the target you're shooting at and wiggle, because there's less chance of people going through the track wheel then. And the other thing I'd strongly recommend, and I never thought I'd say this about a T110E3, do not, under any circumstances, rush forward like an absolute head case. Never thought I'd say that in E3. Because, with its newfound mobility, you can find yourself out in the open with lots of tanks honing down on you. Which means lots of opportunity to hit your weak spots. Now this has never been a concern in the E3. Ever. Point blank period. You're usually the one traipsing behind trying to catch up with your team. Now though, and it's something I was guilty of myself when I first got in the E3 after the buff, was basically driving headfirst towards the enemies going, hang on now, how am I here already? And then of course you're in the open, and you can be flanked very, very easily. And as we mentioned, those track wheels are pathetic. And on top of that, the side armor isn't the greatest, and the rear armor, well, it doesn't have any. It's basically paper mache on the back of it. And every gun at tier 10 can penetrate it with HE. It means you're going to die very, very, very quickly if something gets onto the rear of your tank. Frontally hull down, as you mentioned, it's a monster. Not even hull down, just hiding the lower plate. Out in the open, as you can see all day long, something like a waffle could penetrate us very, very easily. And then you've got things like mediums you seriously need to be careful of, because, quite simply, I fluffed my shot and now he has the rear of my tank. However, there is hard cover next to me, and some mobility in traverse is not that bad anymore. So we can pry him off. You can see he's looking for the weak spot on top, but it's too little too late, and it's just the enemy E100 left. I have 3 kills, I have done plenty of spotting for the team, and I don't manage to get any more damage done on that enemy tank. But I don't mind. And I'm hoping what these games highlight, more than anything, is using the mobility, or the newfound mobility, to get it into strong positions quickly. Positions like the last map, hiding the lower plate. Position like this map, hiding the lower plate. And again, a scout in the E3. It's just an odd feeling. And it's not uncommon since the buff. Something I never expected in an E3. To have spotting damage, or even just spot the enemy. Aside from that, same rules apply to this. Always try and keep some form of hard cover near you. At least that way you can pry things off you if they get a little bit too close for comfort and manage to get round the back of your tank. That's close range though. If you're not going to be playing close range, then what you really want to be doing is just keeping it hull down at medium range. And as you can see from the last 2 maps, and the last 2 games in this video, did not care the slightest that my upper machine gun port, you can't hide it anyway. But you can't do anything to hide it, so you prioritize and you focus solely on hiding that lower plate. At least for the first half, because it preserves your hit points, and it makes you a bit of a monster, a bit of a distraction. Generally, just a real pain for the enemy to try and deal with. In this position, good luck penetrating this tank. Yeah, you can see that machine gun port on top, but at the angle we're at as well, it's very, very small because we're using the maximum gun depression on this thing. Yeah, this is, I've said this in a previous video, in this position, it might have been a live stream actually, but this position is just flat out godlike for this tank. Even Death Stars pointing at this thing in this sort of position just shake their turrets trying to look for somewhere to penetrate. Yeah, they can fire Hesh, but the reality is you're not going to do huge amounts of damage with the Hesh on this thing unless you do manage to land it on the roof. So we've actually found a tank which is very good at countering the Death Star, and I'm hoping with the buff we see a lot more of them. Kind of concerned that it may end up being a replacement in some shape or form, and for competent players or people who do know how to play these things, they are really tough to move and tough to address. For people who drive them out in the open from the very, very start, which, as I said, I'm even guilty of doing that myself, yeah, doesn't bode well for the tank. And as I mentioned in a previous video as well, T110E4 or T110E3. To date, for me, it has always, in every shape or form, been a T110E4. However, if someone asked me now, I couldn't decide. Point blank, I would not be able to decide, and my answer would be get both. E4 is more of a heavy tank, just with crazy penetration for what would be deemed as a heavy tank. And it has a lot less armor, but it's still very well armored with a very, very good gun mantlet. And obviously this thing packs the same gun as a T110E4. And I love the fact you can do this to many, many, many tanks with both of the guns. But yeah, it packs the same gun, it's just slightly improved. Slightly better rate of fire, slightly better gun dispersion. All the stats are ever so slightly improved on the gun, but not stupid amounts, they're just ever so slightly improved. It's the armor on this thing, it is just... in this position, in these sort of positions where your lower plates... look, you can just see that Centurion going, yeah, nope, can't penetrate that. In short, my opinion, get one of these if you don't have one. For those observant among us, I'm on 6 kills, and there is a Leo left on really, really low health. I want that kill, but sadly, I'm not going to get it. The IS-7 on my team is going to finish him off, and I was so close to getting a nice 7-kill game in my T110E3. But I don't mind because I had plenty of scout medals in the last few games. And it was still a 6-kill with 6,793 damage. All in all, guys, I think this is a genuinely good tank destroyer to address things like a Death Star. I'm also expecting to see a lot more of these on the battlefield nowadays. And also, I got a feeling Wargaming may nerf it in the future, because I hate to say it, and I wish I didn't have to say this, I do think it's slightly overcooked. But I'm not complaining, I'm going to enjoy it while I can. I don't think the new traverse speed is what's overcooked on it. I think it's the new top speed, because you get to positions in this tank which make you, well, as I mentioned numerous times, a bit of a brute in terms of armor. And if you can do that very early on, thanks to its mobility, you can change the tide of a battle very, very quickly. Either way, hope you've enjoyed the rambles. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.